All right, here we go. We're off and running. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report by Chat Sports. My name is Chase Sr., and no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And coming up, want to look ahead toward the offseason for San Francisco. In particular, look at some of the top free agent targets for this football team. And we're going to take a look at the top 7 to 10 players at every position to see who San Francisco could add to bolster this roster for next season. And I want to start with this because this really does set the foundation and set the table for the conversation that we're going to have today. It's a look at the Niners' cap and draft situation. San Francisco currently has $46.5 million in cap space going into the offseason. That ranks 13th in the NFL. They were number 1 in carried over cap space from 2024 to 2025. That's a big reason why the Niners are just ahead of the middle of the pack as far as cap dollars among 32 teams in the NFL. And then San Francisco, with the 11th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, their highest selection since 2021 when they traded up for Trey Lance. And they have an opportunity here to get a real impact player at that spot to address a position of need. As for those needs, here are my main Niners offseason needs. They can address this in free agency and in the NFL Draft. You have the draft coming up in April, free agency before that in March, right tackle, center, guard, defensive end, defensive tackle. Those are the 5 most glaring needs for this team that I think they really need to address this offseason. And then some depth needs on this football team. I really like the future cornerback tandem of Deommodore Lenoir and Renardo Green, but everybody else in that cornerback room pretty much, outside of like Darrell Luter Jr., is going to be a free agent. And so you need more depth there, especially in the slot, although Demo can play inside and outside because of his great versatility. Linebacker, we'll see what happens with Dre Greenlaw, but the lack of solid linebacking play after Fred Warner hurt this team at that second level. Can D. Winters take that leap? He could. Is Dre Greenlaw going to come back? That is a possibility, depending on how much money he gets in free agency. But you need to replenish the cupboard a little bit at that spot as well. Jair Brown had a disappointing year too. Still a believer in the player. I think if the Niners get that defensive coordinator spot right, he could return to the form that we saw as a rookie, really like Malik Mustafa. George Odom, he's a special teamer. Could be a cap casualty to save some money, and you don't want to play in that safety spot. So you have Malik Mustafa there for sure. What happens with Talanoa Hufanga? He's going to be a free agent. And where do you stand on Jair Brown as an organization? So safety becomes a little bit of a need as well. George Kittle going to enter the final year of his contract in 2025. I would personally sign him to a contract extension. But can we please get tight end 2 right? Because this football team and organization hasn't been able to do that in a long time. And then backup quarterback, another wide receiver, running back, those are depth needs as well. So let's begin by taking a look at the top free agent quarterbacks here. Sam Darnold is going to start somewhere. I don't think that Russell Wilson is going to go back to Pittsburgh after they lost 5 games in a row to end the season. Daniel Jones needs to rehab. I don't think he's going to be a starter in 2025. He was awful for the Giants in 2024, and after signing that $40 million per year contract, they didn't want him any longer shortly thereafter. Mac Jones, think he's a backup. I know Kyle Shanahan liked him in the pre-draft. I haven't seen anything really outside of his rookie year when he was a Pro Bowler, and I just think he's too slow-footed, doesn't have a strong enough arm. Jameis Winston, a good backup, but turns the ball over at an alarming rate. And then you flip the page, there's Justin Fields, who I think might be the starter for the Steelers in 2025. Marcus Mariota, a good backup behind Jane Daniels. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the nation's capital. Mason Rudolph, Jacoby Brissett, and Zach Wilson rounding out the list of the top 10 free agent quarterbacks. My choice is Zach Wilson. I really think San Francisco should sign Zach Wilson and give him an opportunity to resurrect his career. And I still think he has a lot of ability. I would contemplate signing him to a multi-year deal depending on what the Niners' plans are in the NFL Draft. Still only 25 years old, good size at 6'2", 214, has a laser for an arm, really athletic with mobility. can extend plays with his feet to throw it downfield, but also he can use his legs as a runner. He went to Sean Payton school at the Denver Broncos this year, and Sean Payton raved about him before the year and said, I really think that he can be a good quarterback. Look at what Sean Payton did with Bo Nix. And it's pretty telling to me that Sean Payton wanted to trade for Zach Wilson. Now, when Wilson was coming out of BYU, he also grew up in Utah. I hated the fit of him going from Utah Mormon country to New York City. It is a massive change in culture, and the pressure was on him. I don't think he dealt with it well. But the San Francisco media market is not the same as New York City. Northern California, completely different lifestyle as compared to the Northeast, where it's tough, rugged, fast, and crazy, and there's a lot of pressure. The Niners also rehab Sam Darnold. I think they can do the same with Zach Wilson. And for Wilson, I think he looks at the Niners situation as enticing. Pair up with Brian Griese, Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, good quarterback room. Purdy has injury concerns, so if he goes down, you have confidence that if you develop Zach Wilson, the ceiling for him is so much higher than a Joshua Dobbs or a Brandon Allen. And look at what happened this year with Baker Mayfield last year. And Baker Mayfield this year was great. Baker, Sam Darnold, Bryce Young, they all had rebound seasons when everybody thought they were busts. It goes to show you that sometimes it takes time for these quarterbacks to get on track. And I think Zach Wilson can become a player in this league. Top free agent wide receivers: T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Palmer, Stefon Diggs, Diontae Johnson, and Elijah Moore. Diontae Johnson's been on 4 teams this year. He's a straight-up cancer. Obviously, some big names on that list. I don't think San Francisco is going to go wide receiver hunting for any of those names. And what I would do, I wouldn't sign a wide receiver. I would think about drafting one, get a young developmental player in here, knowing that Deebo Samuel's entering the final year of his contract. But Ricky Pearsall, the last 2 games, impressed me. I think Jacob Cowing has some juice, and I think that he can be a weapon for this offense in 2025. I just think Pearsall and Cowing need more opportunities, and I want to give them runway to see what they're able to do and not block their development with free agent wide receivers. Top free agent tight ends. Been talking about how the Niners need to get tight end 2 right behind George Kittle. It would be great to see some more 12 personnel. Juwan Johnson, Mike Gesicki, Zach Ertz, Tommy Tremble, Tyler Conklin, the most notable free agents. Some of those guys, pass catchers like Gesicki, who can't block, but a player like Tremble, he can catch it and he can block it. He could be a pretty attractive option for San Francisco. And then there's Kylen Granson, Hunter Long, Johnny Munt, Mo Alie-Cox, who's a freak athlete, and Harrison Bryant. So that next 5 wave of tight ends, not really going to move the needle for you. What I would do, and we'll see what the Niners do with George Kittle entering the final year of his contract in 2025, I would give him a contract extension, but I would get younger at tight end. I'd think about drafting one in the mid to late rounds. It's a pretty solid tight end class. I'm also intrigued by what Mason Plante could do as a former basketball player who was a practice squad player for the Niners in year 1. Top free agent running backs: Aaron Jones, Rico Dowdle had a career year for the Dallas Cowboys. J.K. Dobbins has been hurt so much, but when he was on the field for the Chargers, their offense was much better. Najee Harris has some NorCal ties, but salary-wise and scheme fit, he's not going to come to San Francisco, although a lot of you living in Northern California would like to see that homecoming. Cam Akers, injury and production concerns. Javonte Williams, early in his career coming out of North Carolina, looked to be the next great running back for the Denver Broncos, and then hurt his knee year 2. That was very unfortunate. Khalil Herbert, not a bad Swiss Army knife type of running back, not good in pass protection, though. Kyle Shanahan values that. There's Ty Johnson, Kareem Hunt, who's old and will probably sign with the team in Week 9, probably the Chiefs when there's some injuries to that running back spot. And then there's Elijah Mitchell, who is made of glass, and I'm just not bringing back. Really good rookie year, but he's literally been injured every year he's been in the NFL, and he can't make the club from the tub. This running back draft class is absolutely loaded. And that's even with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, the 2 Penn State running backs, returning to Happy Valley to play for Penn State in 2025. Even when you take those 2 running backs out of the equation from this draft class, there are so many good running backs. Cam Skattebo, in the second or third round, that could be a pick that I'd be really intrigued by for San Francisco. He can play running back. You can play a little fullback. You can use him as a weapon. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Do you go running back that early? Kind of goes against my team-building strategy, but I always love some offensive weapons. Top free agent offensive tackles. We'll see what happens with Colton McKivitz. He has one more year left on his deal, but it's non-guaranteed. Trent Williams, I think, is going to come back because the Niners signed him to that renewed deal during training camp after he held out. There's Dan Moore, Ronnie Stanley, who had a really good year for Baltimore. I think he's going to get a bag. Alaric Jackson, Cam Robinson, who got traded from the Jags to Minnesota, Cornelius Lucas, Jedrick Wills, Jaylon Moore, Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and Joe Noteboom. Jaylon Moore played very well in place of Trent Williams this year once he went out. I think Tyron Smith could retire. He's probably the best resume player on this list because he's probably going to make it to the Hall of Fame. And how about what Jaylon Moore was able to do? I mean, we know that the Niners have been starved for offensive tackle talent, or at least fans have been wanting the Niners to be starved for offensive tackle talent because the offensive line hasn't been good enough. But there are so many teams across the NFL who are desperate for better offensive line play. And so they might look at what Jaylon Moore did in a pretty decent sample size, stepping in for Trent Williams, and they might say, we're going to give Jaylon Moore a bag. A young player who is the pupil of Trent Williams, we think that he could become something. He was good for San Francisco down the stretch. And then we go to the interior offensive line. The top free agent offensive guards. Trey Smith could become the highest paid guard in the history of the NFL to protect Patrick Mahomes. There's Kevin Zeitler, lone year in Detroit. He was fantastic. Brandon Scherf of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Patrick McCarry of the Baltimore Ravens. Tevin Jenkins, good player when healthy. The issue is, can never stay healthy. Mekhi Becton was a failed offensive tackle with the Jets. He goes to the Eagles, and at right guard, he was phenomenal this season. Zach Martin might retire because of ankle-foot issues. Dalton Reisner, longtime veteran whose best days are behind him. There's Ben Bredesen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then Aaron Banks, another player making it inside the top 10 for his respective position. I would not bring Aaron Banks back. I'm looking at some projections over the last couple of days, and Aaron Banks is projected to get $8 to $10 million per year. One, I don't think he's worth that. Two, I don't think he's good enough to be paid that. And three, draft a left guard, and I think that left guard could be better. Work off the momentum of what you were able to build with Dominic Pooney, get a better left guard, get a better right tackle and center, and this Niners offensive line can be rebuilt overnight. Which brings me to center. I'd be willing to pay some money here, and Kyle Shanahan has shown that he's willing to invest in free agency in a center. He understands it's such a marquee position for his football roster. Drew Dahlman, fantastic player for the Atlanta Falcons. There's Ryan Kelly, Austin Corbett, Coleman Shelton, Bradley Bozeman, Josh Myers, who got hurt against Philadelphia, and then Brady Christensen. If you think back a few years ago, to what Kyle Shanahan and the Niners did with Weston Richburg, that's the investment that I was talking about that Shanahan was willing to make in a center. They signed Weston Richburg to a 5-year, $47.5 million contract in 2018. He only lasted a couple of years with the Niners because he retired due to injuries, but Drew Dahlman, excellent player, scheme fit, could make an immediate impact, could shore up the interior of this offensive line, does a good job of climbing to the next level. The Atlanta Falcons just ran a Sean McVay offense that fits what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, and this is a player that I would be willing to pay in NFL free agency. Only getting started here on today's show. That was only the offensive side of the ball. We're about to go to the defense. Which offensive free agent, though, do you want the Niners to sign? Let me know down in the comment section right now. Our sponsor for today's show, our friends at Game Time. If you want to experience an NFL playoff atmosphere this weekend for the divisional round, depending on where you live, download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. They have flash deals, zone deals. The more that you wait until the start of the event, the more that prices drop because prices decrease as the event gets closer. Thanks to Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to find the best seats to the events that you want to go to. You don't have to go through thousands and thousands of tickets. Game Time just gives you the best tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can easily resell your tickets as well. And it's not just an app for sporting events. You can go to concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and a whole lot more. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. To the defensive side of the football, the top free agent pass rushers. Josh Sweat of the Philadelphia Eagles, Khalil Mack of the Los Angeles Chargers. He did say that he's going to speak with his family and determine what he wants to do with his football future. He could retire. DeMarcus Lawrence had his season lost due to injury with the Dallas Cowboys, but very productive player throughout his career. Chase Young, not bad this year, but suffered another knee dislocation and injury. Dante Fowler Jr. had double-digit sacks for Washington. Azeez Ojulari is my favorite player on this list because he's young and I think he has untapped potential. There's Malcolm Kuntz of the Las Vegas Raiders, Matthew Judon, older but accomplished player of the Atlanta Falcons. Hassan Reddick cost himself millions and then had 1 sack for the Jets. Most Jets thing ever. And then Charles Omenihu, the former Niner, who's been injured the last couple of years, but to start off 2023 was very solid. An excellent pickup by this front office a few years ago because he played very well in that defensive tackle, defensive end role. If the Niners were to splurge in free agency here, the player who I would target and my top choice would be Azeez Ojulari. He's young still, draft pedigree out of Georgia, has twitch, has bend. This year before he got hurt, very productive player. Injury is a little bit of a concern. I think the draft is more likely for San Francisco to draft an edge rusher and a defensive tackle. And then you rely on Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Nick Bosa to have really good seasons in 2025. Top free agent defensive tackles. I really like Milton Williams. Here's the issue. The Niners need to get better at stopping the run with their defensive tackles. Milton Williams is a pass rushing defensive tackle. And so I think that he's going to get huge money in free agency. And he's going to be one of the most coveted players, but not for San Francisco because he can't really stop the run. There's Osa Adigizua. There's Javon Hargrave, who the Niners are going to cut with that post-June 1 designation. Javon Kinlaw signed a 1-year deal with the Jets. He's once again going to be a free agent. DJ Jones, former Niner, the Denver Broncos, the apple of my eye on this list. BJ Hill, more of a nose tackle. Levi Onwuzurike, Jaron Reed, Benito Jones, and then Calais Campbell, who can play defensive tackle and defensive end. DJ Jones, I would explore bringing him back. You know, he signed like a 3-year, $30 million contract, leaving the Niners after 2021 to sign with Denver. And he's what the Niners have missed and what they need at defensive tackle. Number 2 among defensive tackles in run-stop win rate. And I don't think he's going to get $10 million once again. So that's a name to watch, has familiarity with this organization and system. Top free agent linebacker, Zach Bond, first-team All-Pro alongside Fred Warner. The first year that he's played off-ball linebacker, he was terrific. Great developmental story there. Tyrell Dodson, a solid player. Robert Spillane, not great in coverage, but he can really tackle and give you 100-plus every year. Nick Bolton has been an excellent player for the Kansas City Chiefs. Really the backbone of that defense partially outside of Chris Jones. Ernest Jones of Seattle. Jerome Baker of the Tennessee Titans, Jamian Sherwood, New York Jets, Troy Greenlaw coming off that popped Achilles, wasn't able to play much coming off of that injury. Bobby Wagner is just ageless. He played great once again for Washington, a future Hall of Famer there. And then Levante David had 6.5 sacks for Todd Bowles' defense, but more of that linebacker who's a little bit older and not sure he'd come to San Francisco just given his age and stylistic fit. The big question, obviously, when it comes down to linebacker for the Niners, what will San Francisco do with Troy Greenlaw? And how much money is he going to get in free agency? Top free agent cornerbacks. Carlton Davis had a good year after getting traded from the Bucs to the Lions. DJ Reed, a former Niner, has been a really good corner on the opposite side of Sauce Gardner. Mike Hilton, Cincinnati. Charvarius Ward, I think he leaves in free agency to get more money. Brandon Stevens of the Ravens. Byron Murphy, good player for Minnesota this year under Brian Flores. There's Rasul Douglas, who is a longer physical corner who does a really good job against the pass, but also playing the run. There's Christian Fulton of the Chargers. Asante Samuel Jr. would be a really intriguing slot option for San Francisco. His dad, Asante Samuel Sr., one of the biggest gamblers in the history of football, but an excellent career with the Patriots and the Eagles, picking off a bunch of passes, especially in huge games. Out of the slot, he's missed some time. He's smaller, but I'd like him in there with Diamador Lenore and Renardo Green. And then there's Eric Stokes, a Georgia product for Green Bay. So with Charvarius Ward, I think this ends the road for him in a Niner uniform. One, I think he's going to get too much money. And then after the year, he even said it. When I come back to California, all I think about is my family tragedy. I see road signs. I think about the family tragedy. My wife, she always thinks about the family tragedy. So I think they need a fresh start elsewhere, given everything they've had to deal with losing their 1-year-old daughter a few months ago. And then there's the top free agent safeties here. Justin Reed, Javon Holland, a really good young player. Andre Sisco, Talanoa Hufanga, always around the ball, very instinctual, good feel. We'll see what his market is coming off of a couple of injuries. Jeremy Chin signed a 1-year deal with Washington. He was pretty good on that back end. Julian Blackmon, who would be a scheme fit for San Francisco because he played under Gus Bradley. Cameron Bynum, Trayvon Merrick, Xavier Woods, and Harrison Smith is a veteran who could think about retirement, but if you could get Harrison Smith on a cheap deal and you pair him alongside Malik Mustafa, those are two big hitters, two instinctual players who always find the ball, and Harrison Smith has put together a borderline Hall of Fame career, and if he wants to chase a Super Bowl, he could leave the choke artist Vikings and come to another team that's come up short and choked a lot, but not as much as Minnesota. Which defensive free agent do you like the most? We asked you on offense, we asked you on defense, and now it's up to you to let us know.